Good evening and welcome to another episode of For the Record. I'm your host, Edwin Nand. We have a very interesting show lined up for you today. We have the Chief Executive of the Fiji Revenue and Customs Authority, Mr. Chitoko Tikolevu, joining us for discussions. And also joining us on the panel tonight are Joshua Tuere from the Fiji Sun and Mika Longa, also on the panel tonight representing Fiji Television. We'll get right into it. Mr. Tikolevu, first of all, thank you very much for being on the show. 2015 shaping up another challenging year for your organization, being the main revenue earner for the government. The trend has been that every year there's a target set for Revenue and Customs Authority to earn that much revenue, and you've surpassed that benchmark. For 2015, how challenging do you see this year?
Thank you. Let me first of all thank the Radio Fiji for the invitation for us to be here for the record program. Yes, 2015, it's a new year. Let me state at the outset it will be a very challenging year for us as far as revenue collection is concerned. I say this in terms of the quantum of revenue that needs to be collected. The forecast for 2015 is 2.4 billion. It increased of almost 300 million from our forecast of 2014. So we're looking at the challenge, but we realize that it will be quite a huge challenge for us. We are going through a reform exercise very quickly as well, rebranding, but that aside, we have to reform, restructure ourselves. Just looking at our processes, the debt collection, the VAT refunds, the compliance initiatives, and the aggressive PR. That's something that we rely on significantly moving forward. Because by and large in the past, we've always been relying on compliance and enforcement. Now, modern administration today in terms of customs and tax, in the years to come, there's those kind of activities no more. We really have to be just engaged with stakeholders in terms of PR. It's very important. Sustainability of education programs by FOCA is key for us, both in terms of school programs to be included in their programs ideally, as well as the community, the villages, and all level and the private sector. It's key for us to have an appreciation from stakeholders why everyone should be paying taxes. So
there has been some question as to the integrity of the models used to do forecasting for your organization. Can you explain how exactly? Because there was some suggestion that you under forecast.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question. For us, we have two methods of forecasting. We work closely with Ministry of Finance. One is the weighted average method, and the other one is just economic indicators. The Public Accounts Committee also raised it when we were with them yesterday. I've explained to them the model that we use today has been there for a few years, particularly the weighted average. In the weighted average method, we just look at the pattern, the structure or the actuals for the last 3 years, and we look at compare that with the actual for the current year from January to October. By that time, the macro indicators from Reserve Bank in terms of growth rates, GDP, the inflation, and the like, to extrapolate November and December in the current year. So that's one. So we factor in, it's very ideal time in terms of doing forecasting for budget, which is November. And that's October, just 1 month. After October, the budget are normally announced by the Minister for Finance. So we just use those economic indicators, very current, very new, and very relevant and pertinent, and not some indicators that probably are released in June by the Reserve Bank or in March every year. So October, it's very fresh and very relevant to that time of the year. So one is the weighted average we extrapolate, so that by doing that, and we factor in the policies, budget increase in cigarettes, in goods, and all that, that is to be factored in part of as well as the debt collection and the VAT refund forecast. For the current year, then we arrive at a revised up or down of the current year. Then we have a baseline for the following year, 2015 or in the years to come. But there is always, I guess, challenges in doing that process, particularly from government perspective, when there is already an expenditure thing that has to be met. So revenue as well has to meet the expectation from the expenditure, at least by government. So for example, at 2.4, so we have to rise to that to meet that 2.4 requirement, tax revenue, apart from the non-tax side of things. So it's there, and the economic indicators is just basically the factoring of the economic indicators. But for weighted average, but we've been using weighted average currently with the Ministry of Finance. So it's a common method that it is used by both customs administrations to reflect on the. So I mean, these are just forecasts, factoring the very relevant current economic indicators to arrive at some forecast figure.
Mika?
Yes, with this new approach to creating more public awareness on people's responsibility to pay tax, basically you're trying to create a community that are willing, to do their civic duty as citizens of the country and taxpayers of the country to adhere to this, willingly, other than you going after them.
True. Yes, it's a very important exercise. I think we all want good roads, we want good hospitals and all that. I think people in the community has to appreciate what the tax dollar is key for the community, because government then can do more. So that's part of our plan to be engaged more, to have the faith from the public at large that things are working within us in terms of processes. We receive a lot of complaints too in terms of processes which is too cumbersome, maybe not friendly in terms of timeliness. That's always an issue for us. So we are driving through the PR to make sure that customer service is key. You'll see that in terms of our role is wide. We are at Nandi Airport in terms of tourists that comes to Fiji. We are the first phase of Fiji when tourists arrive. We process the passports, and also the last phase of Fiji when they leave. So the customer service is critical, and of course our frontline people that man the customer services or customer inquiry center. For the last couple of weeks, our officers in the frontline has been very busy because of the requirement for combined FNP and for Kakade. FDB, the Initiative of Government, the $1,000 grant to small, medium. So people, one of the requirements to have a team. So it's been quite a challenge for us throughout our centers. But yeah.
Mr. Tiku, my apologies. We have to take another break. We'll
Sure.
continue after the break. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, Mr. Tikolevu. Before the break, you were talking about there being a big rush for the joint ID cards, FNPF and FIRCA ID cards. What's caused this?
Yeah, it's. I think the closing date is today, 30th of January. The $1,000 grant enlisted by government that the small businesses from the villages that want to access that $1,000 grant from government through FDB and Ministry of Trade. Today is the closing date, and people are just rushing through. For the last 2 weeks, it's been chock-a-block at our office. People are really there, not only for the start of the commencement of the school, but as well as this particular issue. So, but it's a closing date today. We are managing. Coming back to the issue of customer service, for us is vital, because we know in the future, in the next 5-6 years, a strategy will change. It will not be enforcement by and large, or even compliance audit driven. It has to be customer service, PR, aggressive PR in that regard, engaging everyone to have an appreciation, because the result of that is actually we are targeting voluntary compliance. As far as people are, as long as people are well aware of their obligations, what they should do if they have businesses, it will go a long way in promoting our voluntary compliance. So then we have to redivert the resources, retrain our people as well, to look at other useful evaluating function within Fiji Revenue Customs Authority.
It seems things are already moving in that direction. Over the years, FIRCA has been able to reduce its overdue taxes or unpaid taxes by about 65%, if I remember correctly. And compliance year on year has been improving. So is that the direction we're already moving in? And is this a reflection of your compliance division working overtime, or is it that people are more willing to, pay taxes due?
Yeah, I guess you're right. It's a combination of other things as well. I think it's also driven by the government policies, the government reform, the lower tax rates and the broadening of the tax base. The self-assessments. Now it's a PO, it's a final tax that is on for the last 2 years, where the burden of paying tax by employees is shifted to employees. No more lodgement of returns and claiming of refunds. So the allocation of resources is towards compliance now, right? But we're saying 5-6 years from today, we will again refocus in terms of just focusing on PR, more grave. So things are already open, and we are changing our business process, the way we restructure ourselves to meet the demand from stakeholders and government particularly. So not so much visiting people, but we visit people in terms of training, education program, visiting villages by and large. So that's we're actually going through a rebranding exercise. Since we came together in 1998, 1999, 2 government departments came together as Immigration and Customs. We've never done any major reform in terms of structure. Strategy, where we want to be in the next 10 years from today. Are we going to still be doing the same thing? In terms of where we want to be, our corporate statement is always comparing ourselves, this is only on in Fiji, Tax and Customs Department, to be the best in the region. Now we've taken that away. We realize that no, we have to compare ourselves with the best in the world. We look at Singapore in terms of efficiency, the cost of collection, very, very small, very minor. So those are the things that we have, our outlook, our presentation, that is part of our rebranding that is currently going on.
You've obviously set yourself very high targets to meet in the next few years. Do the current tax laws support that vision, or are there shortfalls or recommendations you'd like to make to the relevant authorities in order for the laws to be updated?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have the existence of the authorities through a FIRCA Act, which gives rise to the existing of the structure, the management, and so on. So by and large, the law has to also be changed in terms of our powers, whether we still need to be organized as a statutory authority, whether we collect government revenue through a grant from Ministry of Finance. In other administrations, we keep some percentage of that, and of the total collection, and only look like Singapore, look at Mauritius. That's the model they follow. So there's a agreed model. You raise this much, you return that much. So it's just between Ministry of Finance, for example, and FIRCA. But I guess from long term, this probably in the future, 10, 15 years from today, I think rightly so, government is still keen to have an overall control and say as well in terms of how we organize things, to balance expenditure and revenue more closely to government, so they can have a feel of where we are as the year as the months continue during the course of this year.
FIRCA has, in the past tried to bring down the processing time instead of, for clients. And with your customer focus now, and also the fact that you want voluntary taxpayers in the country, and you just mentioned the $1,000. People are there in numbers at your office. Have you basically thought about how much time a person can wait around at your one of the counters before being served?
Yes, it's a good question. We've always been challenged. At times people come today and then they come back tomorrow. That's not on. The instructions. We've recently recruited one of the executives from the hotels to be our customer service champion, to continuously train our people. So she's just been with us for the last couple of months, to train our people across FIRCA, frontline, those that have the back office processing, the need for friendliness and the customer service, because we've always been deemed as the bad people in terms of civil service concerned, which is fine. But the message that should go is that we are just human beings like anyone, but the work must be done. In terms of the timeliness of our service, it's true. Sometimes we take long in responding to the demand. The processing of certain refunds perhaps is always there. That's really the challenge for us to continue to reduce the timeline. Over the years, the last 2 years particularly, the processing of tax clearance, we slowly, within the day, the TIN now as part of the Tier 1 agencies through Investment Fiji, we are giving the TIN as far as registration of new investors. We give it to FTIB to do it, Investment Fiji. We are no longer, so there's a connectivity between Investment Fiji. They do it, the facilitation by and large is the target. So instead of taking the 3-4 days, and the processing of applications for foreign investors as well is taking long, even 5 days is acceptable, 5 working days. That has to be really, the challenge for us is to work for the 1 day, like everybody else did. Keep on quoting Singapore, that's the benchmark perhaps.
All right.
Foreign investment is just 2 minutes processing time.
Okay, and on that note, gentlemen, this is the end of the second segment. Stay with us. We'll be back for more discussions straight after this. Bulavanaka, and welcome back once again to For the Record. Our guest tonight is the Chief Executive of the Fiji Revenue and Customs Authority. Mika, you have a question for our guest.
Yes, Mr. Tukule was talking about 2-minute processing time in Singapore. The move by your office, I mean, it's commended. But basically, it's not only you, but you have other stakeholders that needs to work with you to also basically bring down the processing time. It must be a challenge for you over the years trying to get these stakeholders together and make sure we have a one-stop shop, real, working, to bring that processing time down.
Yeah. This initiative is driven by Investment Fiji and Ministry of Trade. Ideally, we want to compare ourselves with the best in the world. We are probably placed 65th, 67th, or 64th. Amongst a group of 150 countries in the world. Singapore and them, they are in the first 3 for sometimes first themselves in terms of it takes 2 minutes in Singapore as you're referring to. But we are supportive of that. I think it's the responsibility and the accountability rests squarely on the Tier 1 and the Tier 2 agencies of government. So we have to take responsibility and make sure that happens the sooner the better. We've always been talking about one-stop shop, but today things take long, even 4 or 5 months. So that period has to really come down by and large, even 1 month or a couple of weeks, just 2-3 weeks. The whole approval process completes. The sooner the better, and it can place Fiji in a very good position as one of the favorable country in terms of investment. The approval process has always been something that takes us back. So it's not only immigration, it's not only Investment Fiji, but collectively all approval agencies, including FOCA.
Do you get the support of these stakeholders?
Oh yes. It's driven by Investment Fiji and the Minister for Trade. So there's something coming up amongst the Tier 1 agencies, but that's we leave it to the in terms of approval, simplifying of the process. It's always a process very cumbersome.
Let's talk about the leakages that exist. I mean, tonight we've spoken about the reforms that your organization is doing and the processes that you're bringing in. But every year on year, there's been a case where people don't pay their taxes. Notices are put out, amnesties are provided, and basically reaching out to people and saying, look, we know who you are, we know you owe money, why don't you just come up and pay? What does FIRCA need to do to plug these loopholes, these gaps, so that there's no leakage?
Sure. I think it boils down again to the PR programs that we do, the education programs. And I think the tools of work that we use too, the laws, I think our tax agencies always come up with a complex legislation doesn't help to simplify things. and make the work easier for them as well as us and all the stakeholders. So the laws has to be simplified. We have our income tax decree, which is currently in government. Hopefully, it will be in the next coming months to be passed. So our legislation at the moment has been subject to a lot of other interpretation by all stakeholders. They got their own version. That does not help. So the new income tax decree, which we've been consulting and having workshops with all stakeholders, the private sector, is with the AG's office, and something will be done very shortly to be pushed further to cabinet for endorsement. So that will go in a long way to simplify our process. So simplicity is very critical. I think the stakeholders, as always, have been complaining about our consistency. We take that on board. I.e., consistency. They go to talk of the same interpretation. It's also our frontline people. The message that our managers convey to stakeholders is the same with the messages that are conveyed to stakeholders or taxpayers by our frontline people. That's our ongoing challenge for us. And we're working hard that we also train our people, the system itself. I think too that the system. We acknowledge the fact that there's always underground economies there. The case economy like Fiji, but like a small island, there's always a difficulty, a challenge for any administration to collect the whole 100% that is out there of the underground economy. So it's a big ask to. But I think the more training too that needs to be trained. We need to train our officers. The awareness amongst ourselves as officers of FOCA is critical.
I'll give the next question to Joshua, but just very quickly, what would you say is, if I can put it in this way, what is the most notorious group in terms of not paying taxes, deliberately not paying taxes?
That's a difficult one, but I know. Based on the I probably should just mention it, because we do sector-based audits, and everything today is based on risk profiling. We profile a sector, a group of taxpayers, and this is where we've identified where the most risks are. Don't know whether I should state here in this program or.
Well, is there a general description that you can give? I understand you have your secrecy laws.
Yes. No, we're not naming taxpayers. We've looked at all sectors. We looked at doctors, we look at lawyers, we look at accountants, we look at engineers, we've looked at supermarkets, we look at hotels, we look at manufacturers. So some of these sectors are, I must say, they know the law, but they still doing the wrong things intentionally.
Where do you face the most problems?
At times the doctors, even the lawyers, they have their trust account and all that. So we really need to dig that up, and things, by and large, most of them, they know what is needed to be done. But the intention is there to.
Well, one of the issues highlighted by the Public Accounts Committee this week was the recurring problem of VAT reconciliation in the government ministries, and obviously your organization has tried to deal with this problem. How bad is it, or how has it been addressed so far?
The thing that surprised me more, because despite the training that we do in close consultation with the Ministry of Finance, these are basic stuff, how the VAT return to be filled. So we train the accountants in the Ministry of, in all ministries. And yet, returns are still being filled wrongly. That's the thing, because we conduct training, many trainings here in the West, to train the government accountants how to fill the returns. And it's if I can use that word, shocking too, to see that things are still being filled wrongly. That's why there's still a liability in most of the years by government departments this was December, there's still some payments of VAT liability by government departments. But we work closely with the Ministry of Finance, because then you just have to ask the Ministry of Finance to pay it on behalf, then they can do their own debit and credit perhaps. Because for us, we also need to reduce our arrears, and Ministry of Finance has always been supporting us on that. But the thing that always comes to my mind is, why are they still filling? The form is just basic form, filling the forms wrongly. So a bit of accountability. We will probably just need to go hard in our future, because if things are still filled wrong, then
All right, we'll carry on discussions on this in a bit, but for now, it's time to take another break. Good evening, welcome back to the show. We are speaking with the Chief Executive of the Fiji Revenue and Customs Authority, Mr. Chitoko Tikulevu. Interesting discussions before the break. He was talking about where some of the loopholes are in terms of tax collection and where some of the difficulties are. Mika, I understand you have a supplementary question.
Yes, just going back to the group of people that you were talking about. It could be ignorant of them, complying with the laws that are in place, or maybe the laws are the interpretation is open. It's open to abuse by these people. Like you said, they're in a good position to do what's right. But maybe that could be they take advantage of the loopholes that are there, because this is one of the issues that was raised this week by the Fiji Institute of Accountants. The new tax laws. But some of the provisions are not clear.
Yeah, that's true. As I said, I mean, the legislation is an important tool for us. As long as the legislation is very clear, better for everyone. So, an element of ambiguity may always be there, and people try and take the opportunity to do tax avoidance scheming, because the legislation perhaps is not very clear. That's perhaps they do it. But at times too, I must state that it's so blatant. I think they do to get away from understating the liability. I did state this in one of the forum last year. One of the well-known accountants in Suva, where we used to hear that different set of records for the bank, different set of financials for the fucker. And that's the first time I've ever seen it in my own eyes. And I did state that in one of the forum in the West. So this is under investigation, because we can see clearly the financials. There was one whistleblower that brought the financials to us. There was these financials there, and then on the side they were different in handwriting. Mm-hmm. And this was exactly the handwritten things that were submitted in the tax return and the financials that came to FERC, which was quite separate and independent from the set of records that was maintained and go to the bank. So it comes back to the point that 98% of people are doing the right thing, very good. But there's always a percentage of people that are still doing the wrong thing, although they are very much aware that the thing they're doing is wrong.
What volume of money do you expect FIRCA is losing through these unscrupulous means?
It'll be hard to pinpoint exactly the quantum of revenue, but we have always been stating that. I come back to my earlier point on the cash economy, underground economy. Always talk about 300,000 grand and all that, for small island like Fiji. So if that is still happening amongst people that know very well, who are advisors of, this is an accountant, who are advisors of their clients, they are supposedly to be the eyes and ears of FERC. But if they themselves are doing the wrong thing, I'm just talking generally because this is a true case.
Mm-hmm. And you were only alerted to this case by a whistleblower. So how would you deal with companies that might keep double books or double bookkeeping?
The penalties are there. It's very significant. Treble the amount for customs. For tax, we can go as far as 40%, 50% penalty. So, if it's a tax agent, if there's intention, we'll have to cancel the license for being practicing tax agents. So it might boil down to that, but we'll wait for the finalization of our investigation and audit to verify exactly what has been done.
Let's talk about the customs role that your organization plays. It's always said that drug traffickers. Let's focus on that specifically. We've had success stories. We've had people coming in from different parts of the world, and they've been caught in Fiji. It sort of gives you the message that we're on the ball, we know what we're doing, and we have the resources to catch these people. But the message that always comes out is that they're getting smarter and they're trying to stay one step ahead. So upskilling and training, what are your plans in that regard when it comes to border control?
Yes, I'm glad that that question has been posed because we're now just reinforcing with certain customs. And these customs, they are on us, and of course the police as well. So with the limited resources, limited tools, continuous capacity building is never enough in those areas of specialized detection. So we got X-ray machines in Nandi. Ideally, we can have X-ray machines as well to examine goods that goes by air freight, as well as ports of Suva and Lotoka. We're going through the process now. But the training that comes through from New Zealand Customs, particularly in Australian Customs, is very, very valuable for us. So that's an ongoing program already been set up this year. Specialized targeted areas that we need help on, particularly at the border, intervention that is required, the skills. With the limited resources that we have, it's never enough to.
And the other challenge is we're 300 odd islands. We don't have specific borders to speak of, which you would have on a continent where you can place people at the border to monitor movement. Somebody can sail in on a yacht, go to one of the smaller islands, and then be off without ever being detected. Is that a challenge, and is that something you're looking to address?
It's very true. That's why we have trained police officers. They got boats, so they can board the vessels in Lau, in Honolulu, because we're not there. We don't have boats. So they train officers, they can board and check they'll be certified customs officers when they do that role, only in the islands. Other than that, we just rely on intelligence information that comes through. I mean, the detection that was recently done in Lotoka, 30 million, basically the intelligence information shares amongst the relevant stakeholders. So it's critical for us. Those big concerns, cocaine and all that, because we have always been used as a transit, not only Fiji transit point. The market, because the money is big, so the money is actually offshore. But comes to people know that we don't have tools, we have nothing. So the yacht that was detected in Vanuatu 12 months ago, much higher in terms of the detection of the drugs that it detected. So that's an ongoing challenge. And you see, these guys are smart, and they keep changing the structure, the format that they send into. They use vessels, and the way they package the thing nicely. Till now, it's very common now, the detection we're doing at post office. Very small envelope, but there's heaps of tablets inside. Very, very minor. And that I used to, and then here, then they use it part of home. Then they send it offshore. So we really, shall I say, maybe we're struggling too. Because we never know what's the real quantum of things coming through, which we don't detect anyway.
So do we have a high level of detection of these matters? Or?
Yeah, no.
Do we catch all of them?
That's the challenge, really. For us and the police, really how things that are just coming through which we don't detect. With the limited resources we have, which is sharing information amongst our counterparts abroad. Only then that we can be successfully.
How about the whole issue of money laundering, which is...
sorry, if I may,
Sure.
we need to go to a break. We'll be right back. We'll pick up the question when we come back.
No,
Welcome back. We'll continue discussions. Joshua, you had a question for Mr. Tikulevu.
The issue of money laundering is not just a Fiji problem, it's international. And obviously, you need rigorous processes to be able to catch the criminals, so to speak. What is the organization doing at the moment to address this issue?
Yeah, no, thank you. We have Fiji Intelligence Unit, FIU, Reserve Bank. We have a committee. We are part of that committee. DPP's office, Commissioner of Police, Ministry of Justice. There in Direct Immigration, we discussed the various laws that need to be put in place to look at money laundering issues. You will note that the last 2 years there's some laws, the procedure of crime, legislation has come on board, unexplained wealth. Unexplained wealth was just came in last year, enacted by government. For people to if information has come through that people are carrying big money, then police, DPP and FIU will and FERCA to work closely to investigate and it will be the person's responsibility to go and prove in court where's the source of that money. If it's not explained properly, that money will be forfeited to the state. So it's a very new law. So those just to, for example, someone who just live in the village, suddenly $1 million appears in his account. So and of course, FIU, any transaction under the law, any 10,000 that comes to the bank formally, they'll notify us immediately. So that reporting exercise is there. So unless if the case is outside the formal process, then we'll probably never catch it. But again, like anything else, the border challenges, similarly the money laundering too. The detection of cash at the border, people are not declaring the amount that is required, $10,000 anymore, you should declare. If you're carrying in, of course, $500 Fijian, we are allowed to carry. So they see for other things that have been out there that we're really struggling today to have an effective enforcement. It's an ongoing challenge.
Yeah. The recent incidences of breach in our borders, basically that shows that Fiji is now increasingly being used as a transit point for smugglers. And I mean, that speaks volumes of the gaps that we have at our borders.
Absolutely, the gaps is huge. And it falls back on the border agencies. I think we had celebrated our International Customs Day just a few days ago. World Customs Organization recognized the need for all enforcement agencies at the border to work together. So the theme this year for us was closer coordination at the border front line. The days we operate in isolation is long gone. So in that regard, police and us, we're going to have a combined dog unit in Nandi as a start. Monitoring center in Nandi, where all the agencies are there. Police, FOCA, immigration. When anything's happened in Nandi, we are there immediately, collectively. So all the agencies are there. So we don't complicate resources, duplicate resources as well, because of government resources. It's scarce. So we need to depend on each other. Whoever is strength is good risk, we rely on. So that's what the dog unit, for example.
Yeah. You also mentioned Australian standards in things like this, detection. They have equipments that are there with people on the ground. They don't have to refer to labs and results come out in the next week or so. It's there, it's done there at that moment. And you are looking at beefing up that particular area.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So the country can expect similar machines coming over?
Yeah, the X-ray machines is a must. So that's coming on board this year during the course of it. I know we've been saying this a number of years. These are very technical. We don't have the capacity even to do our evaluation. So we'll have to rely on experts from our side to come and do our evaluation.
Do you have the funds to purchase them?
Oh yes, we have the funds from government.
Let's look at some of the amnesties that were introduced. FIRCA is reaching out to people who have undeclared assets overseas and to people who have taxes owing from previous years. You basically don't have to pay penalty. If you declare, you just clear out your overdue tax payments. For people offshore, there would be a confusion where somebody would think, look, I have a house, but I only use it when I go over for a holiday or if I have some business that side, but do I still have to pay tax on it?
Yeah, this is just from government, the initiative announced by government in November as part of the budget. It's just an information gathering process for us. So essentially means that Fiji citizens or Fiji residents, for tax purposes that are here, they do have assets offshore, properties on rent, shares, receiving directors' fees from offshore entities, trust funds and all that, salaries and wages, they could be receiving salary. It's okay if they're already paying tax in Australia and New Zealand. But in some cases, they may not be doing that. So first of all, let's gather information, and then we check back with we had both our DTA, double tax agreement. So we have that Article 26 of double tax agreement that we normally exchange on almost every month. They send us their interest group or their group of taxpayers their interest on. So likewise we send their. So the exchange of information is very, very frequently. So what will happen? We will check back with Australia. If someone is here having access there, this guy's got a house in Auckland. Is he actually lodging his returns? They say it's fine. So you can just keep in the file. That's fine. But there may be scenarios where he's got a property in New Zealand and in Auckland, for example, in this scenario, and he's not paying tax, he's not declaring, so he's not lodging return, it's also not lodging return here. Because for individuals, residents are subject to tax on our worldwide income. Not only the Fiji income, but the worldwide income. But then we look at Australia in this case, if it's already been lodged or declared there, that's fine. So we'll just, but at least it's in our file. That's the whole purpose of this exercise.
It doesn't apply. The offshore asset provisions don't apply if a person is taking money with them overseas. Say if they're going on a holiday or if they're going to spend the money. That doesn't apply.
No. So what will happen as part of the grading process, we'll find out where did that money, you must have bought a property 5-6 years ago. So Mr. Tikulevu bought a house in Auckland. So where is the source of money? But we'll look at that post. Get the information first, we'll analyze, exchange information with the relevant authority in Australia, for example, or New Zealand. Then if nothing has been done, then assessment has to definitely be raised.
All right, we've come to the end of the show, but before we go, tomorrow, Monday, the 3% tax on second-hand vehicles come in. Now, stamp duty. There's a bit of confusion as to who has to pay this stamp duty and on which vehicles it applies.
Thank you. This is on second-hand vehicle only, right? If second-hand dealers sell a car to me, registered second-hand vehicle, so they'll be subject to stamp duty. I'm the buyer, they're the seller, they sell directly to me, because to be transferred to me. So the stamp duty, because the registration will come to me for stamp, in the LTA. LTA will be doing the collection. So it's only on second-hand vehicle. This particular instrument has always been part of the law since the law was enacted. We're just implementing it now. So the vehicle just came in, we're implementing from 1st of February. When we go to courts to hire purchase for residential, thing was always there. But we're implementing it on a progressive basis when we took over this role in 2011 to administer the collection of stamp duty. So if you like, the instrument was already there. So it's not a new law, it's always there, but coming back to the point, it's only on a second-hand vehicle, any second-hand vehicle. So
it's the person buying who pays because the stamp duty is on the transfer of ownership. It's not the person selling.
Correct.
All right, thank you very much for that, Mr. Tikulevu. That's all the time we have tonight. Gentlemen, Joshua, Mika, thank you very much for joining us. We hope to do this again. And that was our show for tonight. Remember, for questions or comments, you can email us fortherecord@fbc.com.fj. I'll see you next Sunday. Until then, good night.